Hello everyone, No One of Consequence here, back again with a new video. This is episode 77 in a series which recounts my ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is now in its 10th year. So, as always, spoiler alert, in this video I will be revealing details found in this adventure module. I'll also reveal some ideas which I borrowed from this free supplement called D4 City of Spiders, which can be downloaded from the Greyhawk Grognard website. Now keep in mind this is not a standalone product. You must also have a copy of D3 Vault of the Drow in order to make full use of it. Moving on, here is the player character roster for the Descent into the Depths campaign. We have 8 characters, being controlled by 5 different players. And here are the NPCs currently with the party. As usual, there's the 2 guard dogs that are with the characters. There is also the deep gnome Jomjert, whom the characters purchased from the Drow slave markets so that they could pose as slave traders. There was also a goblin named Horko, but he was killed by the priests of Neril in the last episode. At any rate, the characters don't actually treat Jomjert like a slave, and he has been promised his freedom once the characters accomplish their mission in the Drow city. So where we left off last time, the characters were fleeing into the sewers of Arrowhigh Sinlu after being attacked by 2 groups of evil clerics. During that battle, both Gorbadoc and the Sergeant Major had been killed. The clerics all fled at the approach of the city watch, but the characters were trapped between 2 blade barrier spells. Arriving at the scene, the Drow patrols saw other dead Drow on the ground and assumed that the characters were responsible. The Drow shouted that characters were under arrest, but they could not actually apprehend them due to the spells. Rather than stick around and trying to prove their innocence, the characters decided to escape into the sewers. The 2 dead characters were dragged along as well. After climbing down the ladder, the characters safely reached the bottom of the tunnel and found themselves standing in the dark sewers of Arrowhigh Sinlu. The characters decided to use a Halloween reward item, a Wake the Dead scroll, on the Sergeant Major to avoid the point of constitution loss that comes with being raised from the dead. However, Niobe did use an actual Raise Dead spell on Gorbadoc because he has a higher constitution score to begin with. Meanwhile, instead of being pursued, the characters heard the sewer grate being dropped back into its opening. It seemed that the Drow patrols were content to leave the characters to their fate in the sewers, rather than trying to pursue them. Gorbadoc was in a weakened state due to having been raised by a normal spell instead of a holiday item. So, Varys cast a floating disc spell to carry him along. Meanwhile, Obrak determined that the sewer was gradually flowing to the south, so the characters decided to head in that direction. And this just shows the characters working their way along the either side of the sewer channel. And same thing here. And same thing here. The characters had to climb over pipes which were crossing through the main channel. Just as Aramis was about to lead the party further south, the characters further back of the group noticed some Drow appearing out of the darkness. They turned out to be the same half-Drow outcasts whom the party had kept encountering in the city. The Drow explained to the characters that they had been following them around the city as well to discover what they were up to. They were especially interested once they realized that 2 bands of evil clerics were also trailing the party. They saw the ambush take place and the character's subsequent escape down the sewer shaft. The Drow outcasts then went to a nearby sewer access point, which they often used to avoid the street patrols. They then made their way back to this area, where they knew they would find the characters wandering around. The characters said they hadn't been lying back at the inn when they told the outcasts they were on a quest for good, and that they were only posing as slave traders. However, they cannot divulge any details at the time because they never know for certain who they could trust. The Drow outcasts said that they had actually believed the character's story, but they had to be certain. And so that is why they had been following the characters around the city when the evil clerics sprang their ambush. The outcasts told the characters that whatever the case, they would now be considered outlaws too, and would no longer be able to freely move through the city streets. However, the characters could now join with the outcasts and become members of the rebellion. The Drow said that they would lead the characters to a place called Sanctuary, where fugitives from Drow society can live in safety. Having no idea where else to go, the characters agreed to follow the Drow to this so-called sanctuary. The Drow led the characters for quite a way through the sewer tunnels before they eventually arrived at an iron door. While they were walking, the Drow explained to the characters that these sections of the sewers are routinely patrolled by bands of outcasts to keep them clear of wandering monsters. The iron door opened into a dry tunnel situated above the water level, which in turn led to the so-called sanctuary. Stepping out of the tunnel, the characters could immediately see a variety of demi-humans and humanoids freely moving about the area. The Drow explained that almost everyone here was either an outcast from Drow society, like themselves, or an escaped slave. The half-Drow then led the characters to a nearby tavern where they could all sit and talk. Going inside, the characters saw all manner of Drow and non-Drow who had found their way here and had joined the rebellion. Everyone seated themselves around a table in a back room. Jomjert was sent to hang out at the bar, while the others discussed what to do next. The tavern's menu was rather sparse, but it did have some interesting options. Not having eaten since breakfast, the characters ordered platters of both rat meat skewers and fried bat wings with dipping sauce. The Drow outcasts began by repeating that the characters would now be considered wanted, and that it would be very difficult for them to move about the city without being recognized. They then asked for a full explanation of what the characters were really doing in Arrowhigh Sinlu before they could help any further. So, Thoril explained everything about their quest to banish the Elder Elemental God, and said that they had been on their way to the Drow noble lands when the evil clerics attacked. While this conversation was taking place, the platters of food were delivered to the table. The Drow outcast said that if the characters really meant to travel to Lost Home in the Abyss, then they should try to defeat her as well as banish the Elder Elemental God. They said that it had been a big setback for the rebellion when they learned that Loth had been freed from her prison and had returned to the Abyss. There were some sideway glances at Varys at this point, but no one said anything about his role in the freeing of Loth. The half-Drow then said they could help the characters get to the noble lands via a secret way that they knew of, but they asked for help with a problem of their own first. The half-Drow explained that, in addition to occasional raids on the city above, the rebellion is supported through a mining operation located down here. The mining work is willingly done by escaped slaves who now live in Sanctuary, especially dwarves and deep gnomes. However, a few days ago, something huge burrowed into the mines and either killed or drove off the miners. None of those who escaped saw exactly what it was. The miners have blocked off the entrance for now, but unless the menace, whatever it is dealt with, the rebellion will soon run out of funds. The half-drow told the characters that if they would help clear out the mines, they will guide them to a secret way into the Drow noble lands. The characters agreed to this deal, but said that they would first need to rest and regain spells. The characters agreed to meet the Drow rebels back at the tavern tomorrow morning, then asked where they could rest for the night. They were told that they were free to find empty quarters anywhere within Sanctuary. People come and go all the time. The characters soon found some unused space, and after Niobe used her spells to heal everyone, they turned in for the night. Next morning, the characters returned to the tavern and had a breakfast of more rat and bat meat, since those are the only food items on the menu. The Drow outcasts arrived just as they were finishing up, and soon they all departed the tavern together. Here the characters are crossing a narrow bridge spanning a chasm, which leads to the mining area. When the group arrived at the mine's entrance, some dwarves standing guard cleared away the rock barricades so that everyone could enter. The characters then began exploring the now dark and silent mineworks. The characters decided not to create any light so that they might be able to sneak up on whatever it was in here. Those with infravision were alright, but human characters like Niobe could see almost nothing and had to be guided along by the others. Even with his infravision, Varys was still on edge, and so he lit up some elf root to calm his nerves. The characters eventually reached an area where some luminescent mushrooms were growing, which helped light the way a little. Since there was light here anyway, Varys stopped to fire up some more elf root with his flaming sword. Then, glancing up, he saw a huge purple worm suddenly lunge towards him out of the darkness. The creature made a surprise attack roll, but luckily it missed Varys. The character spread out to fight, with Obrak scoring a solid hit. The purple worm made a successful bite attack of its own, but did minimal damage to Obrak. Thorol then used his Wand of Frost to cast a cone of cold at the monster. More successful attacks were scored against the worm, while I kept rolling low for its counterattacks and missing the characters. But since I make almost all of my DM rolls in the open, everyone could see that I was not fudging anything, and it was just the luck of the dice working in their favor. Varys cast a mirror image spell on himself, while Niobe cast a blade barrier at the monster. That damage, combined with additional melee hits, finished off the purple worm. No sooner had the first purple worm been defeated when the characters felt the ground shaking beneath their feet. Suddenly, a second, even bigger worm exploded from the floor of the mine. Although they're not visible in the screenshot, Garrett and the Sergeant Major are just to the north of this second worm, and thus cut off from the rest of the party. Varys, Aramis, and Obrak all ran up to attack this new worm, while Gorbadoc continued firing arrows at it. Meanwhile, Thorol cast a haste spell on everyone within range. Garrett and the Sergeant Major continued running north out of the worm's striking range. The sergeant major had infravision and could see where he was going, but Garrett was running blindly into the darkness. Niobe then ran up to join the others in attacking the worm. And although he is not visible in this screenshot, Garrett had by now returned to attack from the north. Since he could see nothing in the darkness where he was heading, he returned to the area where at least there was some light to go by. The purple worm successfully attacked Niobe, and although the damage roll was very low, the attack roll was high enough that the monster swallowed her whole. Now, as per the monster manual, anyone swallowed by a purple worm can attempt to cut their way out. But they have to act quickly because they have only 6 melee rounds before they are dead. Unfortunately, since Niobe is a cleric, she carries no edged or bladed weapons, and thus could do nothing to help free herself. With Niobe now in mortal danger, the rest of the characters attack the monster with a renewed fury, aided by Thorol's haste spell. The players continue to roll very well, while my attack rolls on behalf of the purple worm remain terrible. The character soon killed the creature and quickly cut Niobe free from its gut. Niobe emerged covered in slimy digestive fluids, so she immediately cast a create water spell above herself to wash it all off. Alright, well that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and if you know of a good place, please share the video. Anything you can do to help support the channel is appreciated. Thanks again. Bye for now.